Millions in Syria and Iraq are facing water shortages as the region's longest river, the Euphrates, dries up.
An apparent impact of the warming climate that has drawn some media attention is the deepening drought in the Tigris-Euphrates River basin, which has resulted in the Euphrates actually drying out in places. Are recent reports that the Euphrates River is drying up an indicator of end times, or just a result of climate change? And should Christians care either way? Interested in knowing more? Let's get straight into the video. Because of what is found in the river, history will have to be rewritten. This particular environmental event has caused some excitement amongst end times enthusiasts, who have been quick to point out that just such an occurrence is prophesied by John in Revelation 16:12. Before considering this particular prophecy and the claims that are being made by some commentators, it is helpful to briefly review the geography of the region and the particular local factors that have contributed to this situation. The source of both the Euphrates and Tigris rivers is located in northeastern Turkey. The rivers run roughly parallel across the southern border of Turkey into Syria, then onward to Iraq, where they eventually join together before discharging into the Persian Gulf. These two rivers account for the region's relative fertility, forming an area known as the Fertile Crescent in an otherwise arid part of the world, providing a vital source of water that has sustained communities since earliest times. The principal cause of the drought has been a substantial and sustained drop-off in rainfall and snowmelt that would normally feed the rivers. This climate-related problem has been greatly exacerbated by over-extraction and poor water management. As with so many of the great rivers across the world, the Euphrates has been dammed at various points along its course, with consequent negative impacts to those reliant upon its waters further downstream. This has inevitably led to regional tensions, similar to those that are being witnessed today between countries on other transnational rivers, such as the Nile and the Mekong. The Middle East is considered to be one of the areas most vulnerable to climate change, which is set to make the region's problems with water scarcity even worse. Bad news for the environment means bad news for people. Some 60 million people rely on water from the Euphrates-Tigris River system to sustain their lives, predominantly in Turkey and Iraq. Since the 2000s, international cooperation over the management of the Tigris-Euphrates basin has reportedly stalled, fanning the flames of both local rivalries and geopolitical tensions between beholders of the river system. This coming century has the potential to witness a number of water wars, where states and militia groups battle for access to water resources. Among the many places across the world where these conflicts are likely to occur, the Tigris-Euphrates complex is one of the most high stakes, owing to the number of people who live in the region plus the ongoing political instability that persists here. Along with the risk of conflict and violence, disease is another big concern. An article published in the British Medical Journal in March 2023 investigated how a myriad of health emergencies are brewing in Iraq because people are struggling to get their hands on clean water. This includes a host of waterborne infectious diseases like cholera, as well as chickenpox, measles, and typhoid. People have fretted over the Tigris-Euphrates drying up since biblical times. Thousands of years on, maybe those fears might soon become reality. The first mention of the Euphrates, and indeed the Tigris in Scripture, is in Genesis, where the rivers are listed as those that flowed out of the Garden of Eden. A prophecy about the Euphrates drying up is found in Jeremiah 50:38, which Bible scholars believe was fulfilled when the Persian king Cyrus conquered Babylon in 539 BC. Specific reference to the Euphrates drying up is found again in Revelation. It is this latter prophecy that has caused a particular stir as it relates directly to end times prophecies. It is fair to say that some view the end times as a little bit like a jigsaw, where the name of the game is to identify world events and happenings that constitute another piece of the puzzle. Eventually, when sufficient pieces are in place, they believe that the return of Christ must necessarily follow. Thus, the Euphrates drying up is interpreted by some as another piece of the end times puzzle, surely hastening the return of the Lord. This may seem like a fair conclusion, but the scripture in question has a very specific context that no one is suggesting applies today. The event described in Revelation 16 occurs at the end of the extensive period of tribulation. It is not an environmental judgment upon the earth, but rather a necessary precursor to the decisive battle of Armageddon, when a mighty army assembled by the kings of the East will array themselves against the Lord in Israel. Nonetheless, while we might dismiss the idea that this particular drought event is a fulfillment of a specific end-times prophecy, we should recognize that the environmental crisis is, more generally, surely a foreshadowing of the end of days, whenever that might actually come about. This is simply because it is widely acknowledged that if humanity continues on its present trajectory, life as we currently know it will become unsustainable. For those who have lost everything in the recent wildfires, this is a very present reality rather than an abstract threat. As believers, we are called by Christ to be salt and light in this world. Whether we prove to be the end times people of God or not, the mission of the church has not changed, and it won't change until the day of the Lord's return. And when the rapture occurs, Jesus tells us that those who are taken up are going about their day-to-day lives. We do not need to second-guess the Lord's return. We just need to keep doing the things He has called us to do. In recent times, the water levels in the Euphrates are currently at one of their lowest points in recorded history. This reduction in water availability, in conjunction with population growth, has furthered water insecurity of downstream countries, such as Syria. Syrian farmers and herders are most impacted by these droughts, which leaves them in a precarious position, with many rural populations at risk of displacement. According to the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, Syria's wheat harvest has dropped by 75% since conflict broke out in 2011. Now, after more than a decade of conflict from the Syrian civil war, many farmers are struggling with harsh economic and security conditions, while having to adapt to new realities caused by the changing climate. And the people most affected by these changes rely heavily on the Euphrates for survival. In particular, water issues are impacting the agricultural sector in Syria, with farmers in northeastern Syria losing their crops due to contaminated water and lack of irrigation. Turkish dams upstream have also contributed to a diminishing flow of water. Syria accuses Turkey of directly weaponizing water access by cutting water to Syrian cities, causing the Aluk water station, a critical source of water in northeast Syria, to stop generating electricity. According to UNICEF, some large water systems and associated electricity infrastructure are split between different areas of control, which challenges equitable water supply access for hundreds of thousands of people. Syrians would likely feel the pain of a changing Euphrates less if the Syrian government functioned and implemented its own laws. Recently, NGOs have started to take a more direct interest in policymaking around the world due to natural disasters, international financial crises, and migration. Beyond simply providing aid, they are now engaging at a higher level and can serve as a stand-in government for citizens living in weak states by providing services typically provided by the government. Syria-based NGOs also have a strong presence and have proven that not every intervention has to be global. Local NGOs have carried out plenty of humanitarian work in vulnerable areas affected by the contamination and drought along the Euphrates, trying to fill the void left by the government. While relevant ministries have enacted laws to reduce water scarcity, such as irrigation fees and penalties for farmers who overuse water, and to modernize irrigation systems, they have not been implemented. In the world of water, everything is connected. Change in one place inevitably has impacts both upstream and downstream. The conditions of the Euphrates River impact not only Syria and the other countries the river flows through, but also the stability of the region. Water levels of major rivers across the globe, such as the Yangtze River in China, the Colorado River in the US, and the Rhine in Germany, have been decreasing dramatically over the last few decades. The volatility of weather phenomena and water access is the new reality to which the world must adjust. As a universal issue, water scarcity must push governments to cooperate, create mitigation and support mechanisms, and find innovative solutions that will help those in need face the challenge. We must learn from what is happening on the Euphrates River. International cooperation and action are the tools for the world to adapt and confront the systemic risks that climate change creates, there and everywhere.